Hi everyone, we're going to continue with Harry Potter in the Chamber of Secrets today. So, where we left yesterday in our story, Harry is with Ron and Fang in the chamber, not in the Chamber of Secrets, in the forest, in the Forbidden Forest. They've come across Aragog, this massive spider, who left with Harry and Ron saying, I won't harm you, but my children, the little spiders, might. And that's where we'll pick up today. Harry spun around. Feet away, towering above him, was a solid wall of spiders, clicking their many eyes and gleaming their ugly black heads. Even as he reached for his wand, Harry knew it was no good. There were too many of them, but he tried to stand ready to die. Fighting, a loud, long note sounded, and a blaze of light flamed through the hollow. Mr. Weasley's car was thundering down the slope, headlamps glaring, its horn screeching, knocking spiders aside. Several were thrown on their backs, their endless legs waving in the air. The car screeched a halt in front of Harry and Ron, and the doors flew open. "Get Fang!" Harry yelled, diving into the front seat. Ron seized the boarhound round the middle and threw him in, yelping, the back of the car. The door slammed shut. Ron didn't touch the accelerator, but the car didn't need him. The engine roared, and they were off. Hitting more spiders, they sped up the slope and out of the hollow, and they were soon crashing through the forest branches. Whipping the windows of the car wound its way cleverly through the widest gaps, following a path it obviously knew. Harry looked sideways at Ron, his mouth still open in the silent scream, but his eyes weren't popping anymore. "Are you okay?" Ron stared straight ahead, unable to speak. They smashed their way through the undergrowth, Fang howling loudly in the back seat. And Harry saw that the wing mirror had snapped off and they squeezed past a large oak. After 10 noisy and rocky minutes, the trees thinned and Harry could again see the patches of sky. The car stopped so suddenly that they were nearly thrown into the windscreen. They had reached the edge of the forest. Fang flung himself out the window in his anxiety to get out when Harry opened the door. He shot off through the trees to Hagrid's house, tail between his legs. Harry got out too, and after a minute so, Ron seemed to regain feeling in his limbs and followed, still stiffed, necked and staring. Harry gave the car a grateful pat, and it reversed back into the forest and disappeared from view. Harry went back into Hagrid's cabin to get the invisibility cloak. Fang was trembling under a blanket in his basket. When Harry got outside again, he found Ron being violently sick in the pumpkin patch. "Follow the spiders," said Ron weakly, wiping his mouth on his sleeve. "I'll never forgive Hagrid. We're lucky to be alive." "I bet he thought Aragog wouldn't hurt friends of his," said Harry. That's exactly Hagrid's problem," said Ron, thumping the wall of the cabin. "He always thinks that monsters aren't as bad as they're made out to be. And look where it's got him. A cell in Azkaban." He was shivering uncontrollably now. "What was the point of sending us there? What would we have found out? That's what I'd like to know." "That Hagrid never opened the Chamber of Secrets," said Harry, throwing the cloak over Ron and prodding him in the arm to make him walk. "He was innocent." Ron gave a loud snort. Evidently, hatching Aragog out of the cupboard wasn't his idea of being innocent. As the castle loomed nearer and nearer, Harry twitched the cloak to make sure that their feet were hidden. They walked carefully across the entrance hall, up the marble staircase, holding their breath as they passed the corridors, where watchful sentries were walking. And at last they reached the safety of the Gryffindor common room, where the fire had burned itself into glowing ash. They took off their cloak and climbed, winding the staircase to the dormitory. Ron fell into his bed without bothering to get undressed. Harry, however, didn't feel very sleepy. He sat on the edge of his four-poster, thinking hard about everything Aragog had said. The creature that was lurking somewhere in the castle, he thought, sounded like sort of a monster Voldemort, even though the other monsters didn't want to name it. But he and Ron were no closer to finding out what it was or how it petrified its victims, even Hagrid never knowing what it was in the Chamber of Secrets. Harry swung his legs up onto his bed and leaned against his pillows, watching the moon glinting through the tower. He couldn't see what everyone else could do. They had hit dead ends everywhere. Riddle got caught up with the wrong person. The heir Slytherin had got off, and no one could tell whether it was the same person or a different one who had opened the chamber this time. There was nobody else to ask. Harry laid down, still thinking about what Aragog said. He was becoming drowsy, and when it seemed like the very last hope occurred to him, suddenly he sat up upright. Ron!" He hissed through the dark. "Ron!" Ron woke with a yelp like fangs, stared wildly around, and saw Harry. "Ron, that girl who died, Aragog said she was found in a bathroom," said Harry, ignoring Neville's snuffing snores from the corner. "What if she never left the bathroom? What if she's still in there?" Ron rubbed his eyes, frowning to the moonlight, and then he understood. "You don't think? Not Moaning Myrtle." So it looks like Moaning Myrtle might have the key. Here is a picture of the castle at night. So cool. Chapter 16, The Chamber of Secrets. "All those times we were in the bathroom and she was just there, toilets away," said Ron bitterly at breakfast the next day. "And we could have asked her now." It had been hard enough trying to look for spiders escaping their teacher, long enough to sneak into the girls' bathroom. The girls' bathroom, moreover, right next to the scene of the first attack, was going to be almost impossible. But something happened in their first lesson, Transfiguration, which drove the Chamber of Secrets out of their minds for the first time in weeks. 10 minutes into the class, Professor McGonagall told them that their exams would start the 1st of June, 1 week from today. "Exams?" howled Seamus Finnegan. "We're still getting exams?" There was a loud bang behind Harry as Neville Longbottom's wand slipped in, vanishing one of the legs on his desk. Professor McGonagall restored it with a wave of her own wand and turned, frowning, to Seamus. "The whole point of keeping school open at this time is for you to receive your education," she said sternly. "The exams, therefore, will take place as usual, and I trust you are all revising hard." Revising hard? It had never occurred to Harry that there would be exams in the castle at this state. There would be a great deal of mutinous muttering around the room, which made Professor McGonagall scowl even more darkly. "Professor Dumbledore's instructions were to keep the school running as normal as possible," she said. "And that, I need hardly to point out, means finding out how much you have learned this year." Harry looked down at the pair of white rabbits he was supposed to be turning into slippers. What had he learned so far this year? He couldn't seem to think of anything that would be useful in an exam. Ron looked as though he had just been told he had to go and live in the Forbidden Forest. "Can you imagine me taking exams with this?" he asked Harry, holding up his wand, which just started whistling loudly. 3 days before their first exam, Professor McGonagall made another announcement at breakfast. "I have good news," she said, and the great dining hall, instead of falling silent, erupted. "Dumbledore's coming back." Several students yelled joyfully. "You caught the heir of Slytherin," squealed a girl at the Ravenclaw table. "Quidditch matches are back on," roared Wood excitedly. When the hubbub had subsided, Professor McGonagall said, "Professor Sprout informed me that the mandrakes are ready for cutting at last. Tonight, we will be able to revive those people who have been petrified. I need hardly to remind you that all that one of them are well and able to tell us who or what the attack to them. I am hopeful that this dreadful year will end with our catching the culprit." There was an explosion of cheering. Harry looked over at the Slytherin table and wasn't surprised at all to see Draco Malfoy hadn't joined in. Ron, however, was looking happier than he had in days. "It won't matter that we never asked Myrtle then," he said to Harry. "Hermione will probably have the answers when they wake her up. Mind you, she'll go mad when she finds out we've got exams in 3 days. She hasn't revised. It might be kinder to leave her where she is until they're over." Just then, Ginny Weasley came over and sat next to Ron. She looked tense and nervous. Harry noticed her hands were twisting in her lap. "What's up?" Ron said, helping himself to more porridge. Ginny didn't say anything, but glanced up and down at the Gryffindor table with a scared look on her face that reminded Harry of someone, though he couldn't think of who. "Spit it out," said Ron, watching her. Harry suddenly realized who Ginny looked like. She was rocking backwards and forwards slightly in her chair, exactly like Dobby did when he was teetering on the edge of revealing forbidden information. "I've got to tell you something," Ginny mumbled, carefully not looking at Harry. "What is it?" Ginny looked as though she couldn't find the right words. "What?" Ginny opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Harry leaned forward and spoke quietly so only Ginny and Ron could hear. "Is it something about the Chamber of Secrets? Have you seen something? Someone acting oddly?" Ginny drew a deep breath, and at that precise moment, Percy Weasley appeared, looking tired and wan. "If you finished eating, I'll take your seat. Ginny, I'm starving, and I've only just come off patrol duty." Ginny jumped as though her chair had been electrified, gave Percy a fleeting, frightened look, and scapered away. Percy sat down, grabbed a mug from the center of the table. "Percy," said Ron angrily, "she was just about to tell us something important." Halfway through a cup of tea, Percy choked. "What sort of thing?" he said, coughing. I just asked her if she'd seen anything odd, and she started to say, "Oh, that's nothing to do with the Chamber of Secrets," said Percy at once. "How do you know?" said Ron, his eyebrows raised. "Well, if you must know, Ginny walked in on me the other day when well, never mind. The point is, she spotted me doing something, and I asked her not to mention it to anybody. I must say I don't think she kept her word. It's nothing really. I'd just rather..." Had never seen Percy look so uncomfortable. "What were you doing, Percy?" said Ron. "Go on, tell us. We won't laugh." Percy didn't smile back. "Pass me the rolls. I'm starving." Harry knew the whole mystery might be solved without their help, but this wasn't about to pass a chance to speak to Myrtle if it turned up. And to his delight it did, mid-morning when they were being led to the history of magic by Gilderoy Lockhart. Lockhart, who had often assured them that all the danger had passed, only proved to be wrong straight away, was now wholeheartedly convinced that it hardly was worth the trouble to see them safely through the corridors. His hair wasn't as sleek as usual. It seemed to be been up most of the night, patrolling the fourth floor. "Mark my words," he said, ushering them around the corner. "The first words out of that poor petrified people's mouths will be, 'It was Hagrid.' Frankly, I'm astounded Professor McGonagall thinks all the security measures are necessary." "I agree, sir," said Harry, making Ron drop his books in surprise. "Thank you, Harry," said Lockhart graciously, as they waited for a line of Hufflepuffs to pass. "I mean, we teachers have quite enough to be getting on without walking students to classes and tending guards all night." "That's right," said Ron, catching on. "Why don't you leave us here, sir? We've only got one more corridor to go." "You know, Weasley, I think I will," said Lockhart. "I really should go and prepare for my next class." And he hurried off. "Prepare his class," Ron sneered after him. "Gone to curl his hair more like it." They left the rest of the Gryffindors draw ahead of them, and then they darted down the side passageway off to Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. But just as they were about to congratulate each other on the brilliant scheme, "Potter, Weasley, what are you doing?" It was Professor McGonagall, and her mouth was the thinnest of thin lines. We were, Ron stammered. We were going to go see Hermione," said Harry, and Ron and Professor McGonagall both looked at him. "We haven't seen her for ages, Professor," Harry went on hurriedly, treading on Ron's foot. "And we thought we would sneak to the hospital and tell her the mandrakes were nearly ready and not to worry." Professor McGonagall was still staring at him, and for a moment Harry thought she was going to explode. But then she spoke. It was a strangely croaky voice. "Of course," she said. Harry, amazed, saw a tear glistening on her beady eye. "Of course. I realize this has been the hardest on the friends of those who have been. I quite understand. Yes, Potter, of course. You may visit Miss Granger. I will implore Professor Binns that you are gone. Tell Madame Pomfrey I've given my permission." Harry and Ron walked away, hardly daring to believe that they had avoided detention, and they turned the corner and now distinctly heard Professor McGonagall blow her nose. "That," said Ron fervently, "was the best story you ever came up with." They had no choice now but to go to the hospital wing. Tell Madame Pomfrey that they had Professor McGonagall's permission to visit Hermione. Madame Pomfrey let them in reluctantly. "There's no point talking to a petrified person," she said, and they had to admit that she was right when they'd taken their seats next to Hermione. It was plain that Hermione didn't have the faintest inkling that she had visitors, or that they might as well tell her bedside cabinet not to worry, or what good it would do. "Wonder if she did see the attacker, though," said Ron, looking sadly at Hermione's rigid face, "because if he sneaked up on them, no one will ever know." But Harry wasn't looking at Hermione's face. He was more interested at her right hand. It lay clenched on top of her blankets, and bending over closer, he saw that a piece of paper was crunched inside her fist. Making sure that Madame Pomfrey was nowhere to be seen, he pointed this out to Ron. "Try and get it out," Ron whispered, shifting his chair so that he blocked Harry from Madame Pomfrey's view. It was no easy task. Hermione's hand clamped so tightly around the page, Harry was sure it was going to tear. While Ron kept tugging and twisting, Ron kept watch as he tugged and twisted, and at last, after several tense minutes, the paper came free. It was a page torn from a very old library book. Harry smoothed it out eagerly, and Ron leaned in to read. "Of the many fearsome beasts and monsters that roam our land, there is none more curious or more deadly than the basilisks, also known as the king of the serpents. This snake may reach gigantic in size and live for many hundreds of years. It is born from a chicken's egg hatched beneath the toad. Its methods of killing are most wondrous. Aside from its deadly and venomous fangs, the basilisk has a murderous stare, and all who are fixed upon it with the beam of its eye shall suffer instant death. Spiders flee before the basilisk for its mortal enemy, and the basilisk flees only from the crowing of the rooster, to which it is fatal. And then beneath it, the single word had been written in Hermione's in hand, as Harry recognized as Hermione's. Pipes. It was as though somebody flicked a lid on his brain. Ron, it breathed. This is the answer. The monster in the chamber is the basilisk, a giant serpent. That's why I've been hearing the voice all over the place. And nobody else has heard it. It's because I understand Parseltongue. Harry looked up at the beds around him. The basilisk kills people by looking at them, but no one's died because no one looked at it straight in the eye. Colin saw it through its camera. The basilisk burned up all the film inside, but Colin just got petrified. Justin must have seen the basilisk through nearly headless Nick, and Nick got the full blast of it, but he couldn't die again. And Hermione and the Ravenclaw prefect were found with a mirror next to them. Hermione had just realized that the monster was a basilisk. Bet you anything she warned the first person she met to go around the corners with the mirror first. And the girl pulled out of her mirror, and Ron's jaw dropped. Mrs. Norris? He whispered eagerly. Harry thought hard, picturing the scene of Halloween. The water, he said slowly. The flood from Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. I bet you Mrs. Norris only saw the reflection. He scanned the page once more. He scanned the page in his hand eagerly. The more he looked, the more it made sense. The basilisk flees only from the crowing of the rooster, to which it is fatal, he read aloud. Hagrid's roosters were killed. The heir Slytherin didn't want anyone near the castle once the chamber was opened. Spiders flee before the basilisk. It all fits. But how's the basilisk getting around the place? A dirty great snake someone would have seen? Harry, however, pointed to the word written Hermione scribbled at the foot of the page. Pipes, he said. Pipes, Ron. It's been using the plumbing. I've been hearing that voice inside the walls. He suddenly grabbed Harry's arm. The entrance to the Chamber of Secrets, he said hoarsely. What if it's the bathroom? What if it's in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, said Harry. They sat there, excitement coursing through them, hardly able to believe it. This means, said Harry, I can't be the only Parselmouth in the school. The heir Slytherin's one too. That's how they've been controlling the basilisk. What are we going to do, said Ron, whose eyes were flashing. Should we go straight to McGonagall? Let's go to the staff room, said Harry, jumping up. She'll be there in 10 minutes. It's nearly break. They ran downstairs, not wanting to discover the hanging around another corridor. They went straight into the deserted staff room. It was large, paneled, full of dark wooden chairs. Harry and Ron paced around it, excited to sit down. The bell signaled break never came. Instead, echoing through the corridors came Professor McGonagall's voice, magically magnified. All students return to the house dormitories at once. All teachers return to the staff room immediately. Harry reeled around to stare at Ron. Not another attack, not now. What'll we do, said Ron aghast. Go back to the dormitory? No, said Harry, glancing around. There was an ugly sort of wardrobe to his left, full of teachers' cloaks. In here. Let's hear what this is all about, so we can tell them what we found. They hid themselves inside of it, listening to the rumbling of hundreds of people moving overhead. And the staff room door banging open, from between them musty folds of cloaks, they watched teachers fluttering into the room. Some of them were looking puzzled, others downright scared. Then Professor McGonagall arrived. It has happened, she told the silent staff. A student has been taken by the monster, right into the chamber itself. Professor Flitwick let out a squeal. Professor Sprout clapped her hands over her mouth. Snape gripped the back of the chair hard and said, How can you be sure? The heir of Slytherin, said Professor McGonagall, who was very white, left another message, right underneath the first one. Her skeleton will lie in the chamber forever. Professor Flitwick burst into tears. Who is it? Said Madame Hooch, who had been sunk, weak-kneed in the chair. Which student? Ginny Weasley, said Professor McGonagall. Harry felt Ron silently slide down the wardrobe floor beside him. We shall have to send all students home tomorrow, said Professor McGonagall. This is the end of Hogwarts. Dumbledore always said. The staff room door banged open again, and for a wild moment, Harry was sure it would be Dumbledore, but it was Lockhart, and he was beaming. Sorry, dozed off. What have I missed? He didn't seem to notice that the other teachers were looking at him with something remarkably like hatred. Snape stepped forward. Just the man, he said, the very man. The girl had been snatched by the monster, Lockhart, taken to the Chamber of Secrets itself. Your moment has come at last. Lockhart blanched. That's right, Gilderoy, checked Professor Spouch. Weren't you just saying last night, if you'd known all along where the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets was? Well, sputtered Lockhart. Yes, well, didn't you say you were sure you knew what was inside of it? Piped up Professor Flitwick. Did I? I don't really recall. I certainly remember you saying that you were sorry you hadn't had a crack at the monster, Hagrid, before Hagrid was arrested, said Snape. Didn't you say the whole affair had been bungled and that it had been given free rein from the first? Lockhart stared around at his astonished colleagues. I really never said. He must have understood. We'll leave it to you then, Gilderoy, said Professor McGonagall. Tonight will be an excellent time to do it. Make sure everyone's out of your way. You'll be able to tackle the monster all by yourself. A free rein at last. Lockhart gazed desperately around him, but no one came to the rescue. He didn't look remotely handsome anymore. His lip was trembling, and the absence of his usually toothy grin looked weak and chinny. Very well, he said. I'll try. I'll be in my office getting ready. And then he left the room. Right, said Professor McGonagall, whose nostrils flared. That's got him out of the way from under our feet. The heads of houses should go inform their students what happened. Tell them that Hogwarts Express will take them home first thing tomorrow. Will the rest of you please make sure no students have been left outside their dormitories? The teachers rose and left once by once. That is where we'll stop for today. So Ginny is in the Chamber of Secrets. My goodness gracious. What do you think Harry and Ron are going to do about it? All right, everyone. That's it for today. I'll talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.